Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us on this lovely sunny morning. My name's Kirsty Livingston and I'm the Head of Membership Services and Strategic Partnerships. And it's a delight to welcome you today to our webinar series. So today we're looking at a practical guide to an introduction to the Scottish Government public appointments, an introduction to what the benefits are like, what's involved, the different roles available, and how to apply for these roles. So I'm going to hand you over in just a moment to Robert Boyter, who works in the Scottish Government Public Appointments team, and he runs workshops and induction services for any new people coming into the organisation. So we thought we'd hear from him. And then at the end, we'll go over to Jill Graham, who's a board member of the Healthcare Improvement Scotland, and she'll tell us what it's really like to be on a board and how she got there and what she gets from it and the many benefits that are there for individuals. So just as a reminder, if you could keep yourself on mute throughout the session, we can ask questions at the end. And if you think of anything along the way, just put it in the chat box, please. We're also recording the session so you can use it afterwards or share it with any colleagues. So without further ado, I'll hand over to you, Robert. Thanks, Robert.
Thank you, Kirsty, and thank you everybody for joining us. And so we're running this session. So a lot of people ask about public appointments, so we're reaching out to let you know, basically try and answer any questions you've got regarding public appointments and try and dispel any myths and try and get you interested to apply for any appointments. Can I have the next slide, please, Kirsty? Right, so public bodies, these are they operate at arm's length from Scottish ministers, and they advise government deliver public services in Scotland on behalf of ministers. One thing is they operate at arm's length. They often provide specialist services which government are not able to do, and some provide statutory functions, regulatory and advisory functions. It depends on the body, and as I say, so they deliver public services, and for example, providing NHS, for example, and we have the Care Inspectorate, and we have the national museums and the national collections. So as I say, they work at arm's length. They advise ministers, something like Mobility and Access Committee for Scotland, for example. They are set up as an advisory body, and they advise ministers on issues regarding the accessibility to transport for those with a disability. Can I have the next slide, please, Kirsty? So within each public body, there is a board, and the board will consist of non-executive members, and there'll be a board member and board chairs.
Me too, please. Look at Rolly. Me too, please.
Sorry, I've got a bit of over here. So the main function of the board is to ensure that the body delivers its statutory functions in accordance with the minister's policies and priorities, to provide strategic leadership, the important one, to provide financial stewardship on behalf of ministers, and to hold the chief executive and the senior management to account. This can vary according to the public body function. More often than not, the chief executive is employed by the board. However, there are some boards who are advisory boards, and they will advise the chief executive. One of those boards, for example, is Transport Scotland. It's an advisory board, so they will advise the chief executive. Can I have the next slide, please, Kirsty? So this is I'll share these slides afterwards if anybody wants them, by the way, I meant to say at the beginning. So the public body delivery chain, so there's ministers, then there's the chairs, then there's the boards, and then there's the executive. It's very, very key that the minister is at the top, and they delegate to the board chair. And obviously the board, then there's the board, and then the chair and the board oversee the executive of it. And within that, there is a sponsorship function in that it's a department within government, usually within a certain portfolio. For example, the Transport Scotland have the Highlands and Islands Airport Limited, for example. So they report to the team in Transport Scotland. Likewise, your museums, they report into the team who are responsible for the creative arts. Next slide, please. So the public appointments process, it's regulated, and it is regulated by an independent regulator called the Ethical Standards Commission. I'll come on to that later. So ministerial appointments for 92 public bodies, and there's 700, as it's currently 718 public body board members and board chairs. So as I said, the appointments process is regulated by the Ethical Standards Commission. In 2019, we appointed 135 people. That was 18 chairs and 117 new board members. And there's a ministerial commitment of which has been programmed for government, which is setting out the direction for the government by ministers. And we have a commitment within that the public appointments should be representative of the people of Scotland. And since 2019, 50% of public appointees are women. And I've got the stats for you now. So at present, 51.74% of all public appointees are held by women. There's still a bit more to go to get more chairs who are women. And at this moment in time, 39% of our board chairs are women. So we've got a bit more work to do within that, but we have reached the 50% barrier, which we said we would do. Can I have the next slide, please, Kirsty? So as I said, the public appointments process is regulated by the Ethical Standards Commissioner. The Ethical Standards Commissioner is appointed and is accountable directly to the Scottish Parliament. The Ethical Standards Commissioner produces an annual report, which is laid before Parliament. Usually in September, October every year, and they will report on the public appointments, how we are doing against the targets that the Commissioner has set, and suggestion to the Parliament areas in which we could further make improvements to the appointments process. So the Commissioner, through their founding legislation, they promote fairness, good conduct and transparency in public life. It's a dual function because they're also a standards commissioner, and they'll investigate complaints about councillors, MSPs and board members. And the other part of the role is they have a code of practice and guidance of which our public appointments must stick to. Can I have the next slide, please, Kirsty? So as I said, there's a code of practice which defines the public appointments process. So it's based on merit, which is defined by Scottish ministers meeting the specific board needs at a specific point in time. So when a board is looking to make an appointment, they will look at the current skills of the board and what skills they think the board will need. So integrity. The public appointments process should be open, fair and impartial, and give ministers and public assurance, and that's our principles of public life in Scotland. And diversity and equality. So we should be, as I mentioned earlier, representative of people of Scotland, and we've also are required to stick to the gender representation of public boards. Scotland Act, that is basically making sure that boards are gender balanced and they have representation of women. Next slide, please, Kirsty. So roles and responsibilities. So the role of the non-executive is to not get involved in the operational aspects. So we have this diagram which came out at a board member and board chairs workshop we did about striking a fine balance, about not getting too involved, but at the same point getting involved when there's issues. So once a person's appointed, they will receive an induction at the board level. But we also, since 2018, we've been running a corporate board induction which supports the induction you would get at your public body board. In that we'll have a Scottish minister coming along to see what's expected of a board member what the ministers expect of the boards of public bodies in Scotland. We will also have the Ethical Standards Commissioner come along, and the Ethical Standards Commissioner will mention the code of practice, and also the expectant the board members to stick to. We'll also have Audit Scotland who will come along and remind about the public purse and value for money. And there will also be a senior member from the Scottish Government come along to talk about the relationship between Scottish ministers and boards. Next slide, please. So I've probably got this in the wrong way round, because you probably should hear from Jill first, because we're going to Jill after this. So why apply for a public body appointment? So it's a passion for the issue, professional development, to build on your own skill set, to develop your own networks, and a sense of public service. When we do events, we often get people saying they want to give back to something to society, or there's a specific area that interests them, and they've seen a vacancy on our website, which is Appointed for Scotland, and they would like to know more about it. And it's also developing your own. Some people bring their networks. They've got wealth of experience in a particular area. I'm thinking of one board member who was appointed recently. She's on the board of Highlands and Islands Enterprise, and she used to work abroad, and she was developing businesses there. So she had a passion for about developing businesses, and she had her own network. So she's just been appointed to that board, for example. And so that's to give you an idea. So I'd like to introduce Jill Graham, who's a board member of Healthcare Improvement Scotland. And Jill will talk about her own experience better than I could of what it is actually like being a board member. And you can ask any questions you want. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. So, yeah, so as Robert said there, I've been a member of Healthcare Improvement Scotland, which is a national board of NHS Scotland, since March 2019. Now, I'll tell you a bit about my background, and that kind of lead us into why I applied, and then the experience I've had of being a board member. So I guess if you go back in the dim and distant past, my first role was in academia. I was a lecturer in mathematics. But I always felt a bit of a fraud, because students would say, why are we learning this? And I'd never really used anything in anger, because I'd been in academia. So I always felt, oops, how can I answer that question? So in 1990, I set out to put that to rights, and I joined the energy industry with Scottish Power in their operational research department. Now that was just as privatisation was happening, and the energy industry was embarking on a journey of change, which is really still ongoing now. I really enjoyed my time at Scottish Power. I was lucky enough to experience a number of different roles. And in 2002, after 12 years, I left Scotland for Amsterdam to take up the post of Chief Risk Officer with the trading arm of a Dutch energy utility called Nuon. Risk management was an area I stayed in until 2014, when I was appointed to lead the operations business unit of the trading arm of a Swedish utility, Vattenfall, which had purchased Nuon in 2009. Now that meant responsibility for things where I had limited content knowledge. Up until that point, I was very, very heavy on the content. But obviously as time goes on, you become more in leadership and management and less in the content. And in this role, I was responsible for things where my content knowledge was really, wasn't so great. Things like IT, project management and procurement. And that opened up a new world to me. I set about implementing agile working methods. I became a strong advocate of operational excellence and continuous improvement. And in 2018, at the beginning, I was speaking at a process excellence conference in London. And there were a couple of presentations from groups working with the NHS. And that greatly impressed me. And it planted a seed that getting involved in process improvement in the NHS might be an interesting next step. Now, at the end of 2018, November, we returned to Scotland. I had no desire to jump back into a full-time role. And initially we were in temporary accommodation. So really the focus was about getting resettled in Scotland. I was lucky that I was under no financial pressure to get back into full-time employment. But equally, I wasn't ready to retire. So a non-exec position appealed to me as something that would keep the old grey cells occupied without too big a time commitment. You know, after so many years of long hours, huge pressure and lots of travel, I was keen to spend time with my husband, especially as by this time both kids had left home for university. Now, a significant part of my career was spent in energy trading, where risk management is very much a governance role. I chaired numerous committees and project steering groups. I developed and implemented countless policies and procedures. I was a frequent author and presenter of board papers, and these were all skills I felt equipped me for a role as a non-executive director. Change leadership was a constant throughout my career, but in the last few years of my time at Vattenfall, that accelerated even more, and I was really captivated by agile working, operational excellence and continuous improvement, and all the associated aspects of workplace culture. So when I came across the advert for a non-exec position for Healthcare Improvement Scotland, that seemed like a perfect match. Now, I knew very little about the public sector, and remembering I'd spent the previous 16 years in Amsterdam, so I didn't really know about the Scottish government scene either. And there were a few culture shocks in store, starting with the recruitment process, which seemed much more drawn out than I was used to. But I was delighted to be appointed, and I was fortunate I was one of 4 new appointees, so it meant I wasn't the only new kid on the block. The first meeting I attended was a board seminar, and I pretty soon realised that the underlying subject matter was completely alien, and everyone was speaking a different language. In fact, I would say the first few months felt a bit like death by acronym. Happily, there were many induction sessions to help me settle in. The one that Robert mentioned, run by Scottish Government to explain the role of boards and public bodies. And that was a real eye-opener for me, just in terms of how many public bodies there are, as we just heard. 92, I think you said there, Robert. That was also very useful in terms of a networking opportunity and a discussion on values and behaviours. And I would say that's definitely a worthwhile event. So if you are looking to become a non-exec, then please don't miss this one out, because it was very, very worthwhile. I also attended a training day devoted to code of conduct, understanding about declarations of interest and how to deal with a conflict of interest, either a personal conflict or in a situation where you perhaps feel one of your board members, the fellow board members, is conflicted. And on the content side, we had induction events with his Healthcare Improvement Scotland, or HIS for short, exec team, individual sessions as well as group sessions. And I also attended a corporate induction day where I met other newcomers to the HIS organisation. Now, of course, as Robert mentioned, their board has an assurance role. It's not responsible for operational management. And for me, I think coming from a completely different sector was an advantage in that regard, because there's no way I could get involved in the detail, because it was just, I just didn't have the skill set. So it was very easy to have a hands-off approach. Now, coming from the private sector, I found the meeting culture is very different. It's very formal. Everything goes to the chair. And even the fact that the chair is addressed as chair rather than by their name is something I found very, very bizarre. The meetings are also much larger than I was used to, with upwards of 25 attendees, not unusual. Now, to begin with, it was a case of climbing the fairly steep learning curve to understand the organisation and its purpose. Now, clearly the skills picked up in the course of a career, like taking information on board, identifying the important points and potential issues, understand the financial information and challenging budget assumptions, they're all relevant in any setting, but I needed to understand the context. One of the most fruitful sessions I found was our 2-day strategy session that was held in October 2019, so around 8 months after I'd been appointed. Now, that really gave me an opportunity to get to know the other board members and the exec team better and to contribute to the future direction. Now, as you can imagine, being involved in strategy development makes it much easier to engage effectively in the subsequent assurance processes. Now, pretty soon it became obvious that the time commitment that was claimed was a wild underestimate of what's actually required. So I would really bear that in mind, take that into your planning. I find the prep time for meetings is significant. There's a vast amount of reading for every meeting, which was particularly daunting to begin with when the subject matter was so unfamiliar. So it might have taken me a few goes to get a good understanding of a paper. Now, these days, the volume of documents arriving ahead of meetings is still formidable, but with more than 18 months experience, they're easier to make sense of and get through. I still feel, however, that the exec team tend to include more detail than necessary. And if I compare this to my experience in the private sector, this is one area where there's less formality. I was used to a world where the submission timetable, format, and length of board papers was strictly defined. Any departure meant submissions just weren't accepted. And I think the same sort of rigour would be valuable in his organisation. In addition to board meetings once a quarter, there are board seminars where particular topics are discussed in more depth, and there's development days where the exec team use the opportunity to develop the board's understanding of chosen areas. I also sit on 2 governance committees, the Audit and Risk Committee and the Quality and Performance Committee, which also meet on a quarterly basis. In addition, I've been a member of a couple of short life working groups on particular topics. So again, you know, this all adds to the time that you need to be willing to give up. With regards to the exec team, I see my role as providing support and advice whilst challenging. I think my risk management background helps in that regard. I'm used to being the person in the room asking the difficult questions. Now, looking back over my time on the board, I think bringing a different perspective has been beneficial. I've challenged the organisation to think differently about risk management, and I've acted as a critical friend to his own internal improvement efforts. Now, these interactions are outside the formal meeting timetables, reinforcing again about the time commitment being more than just the 2 to 4 days a month that's talked about. Healthcare Improvement Scotland's got 2 main offices, one's in Glasgow, one's in Edinburgh, and in normal circumstances, meetings tend to alternate between the 2, so that adds travel time on top as well. Now, of course, since March 2020, everything's been online. I'm hopeful that going forward, there'll be a blend of online and face-to-face meetings, recognising the benefits of each. Now, Robert touched there on the diversity in terms of gender, and I've heard a lot about, you know, looking for greater diversity from boards. But from my experience, it's really only people who are retired or semi-retired who could possibly afford the time commitment. And when you take into account, you know, the payment is not attractive to anyone reliant on that as a source of income. I enjoy what I do, absolutely. But I really do it for altruistic reasons. I mean, as Robert mentioned there, I'm very passionate about, you know, helping the NHS to improve in any way. But I think, you know, these aspects need to be addressed if there's a desire to move away from boards made up of professionals over the age of 55. I get a lot of satisfaction and a sense of purpose in my role. But again, you know, maybe I'm being too pessimistic, but I do think it's really important, you know, you recognise the effort and dedication that required to be an effective non-executive director. You know, you get a lot back, but you put a lot in. And I would leave it there.
Thank you, Jill. That was amazing. Thank you. There's questions coming in, but I think what we'll do is we're going to go over to Robert just to finish his slides. And then we'll come to the questions at the end, if that's okay, because he might answer some of these questions that people are posting. Thank you so much, Jill. I'll hand back over to you, Robert.
Right, I was going to do it to see if anybody had any questions at this stage, because the next bit is actually about applying for an appointment. So you might have questions that you want to ask Jill, because I've just seen one coming in asking about challenge and scrutiny. Jill, do you want to answer that one?
Okay, I've got to admit I'm a bit of a Zoom novice, so I can't see the question. So perhaps you could read it out for me.
All right, wait a minute, it's disappeared.
Shall I ask it as it was my question?
Yeah, no problem.
So in my experience of applying for roles and choosing roles, I found that different executive teams are either receptive or not receptive to being challenged and scrutinised. And obviously the ones that are not particularly open to scrutiny are not particularly interesting roles to do. What's your experience been in that respect?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm lucky in that the board I'm on is one that is open to scrutiny. And I think perhaps, again, because I came from such a different background, you know, the fact that, you know, it wasn't just I wasn't in the health sector, I wasn't in the public sector, and I'd been abroad as well. So, you know, I think they were a bit intrigued by what I brought to the table, perhaps. And I found that actually looking at the strategy session, which I talked about, the 2-day strategy session, I think that's when I kind of almost earned my spurs in a sense, because, you know, I think they were able to see that I looked at things slightly differently and did challenge them to think of things maybe in a way that they hadn't thought of them before. So I think, you know, it's only natural people start off maybe a little bit defensive if you're going in and saying, you know, this doesn't make sense on your paper. I think it's important that you're bringing it from a contextual basis. So you don't just come up with what's wrong with it, but have you thought about it this way? And maybe I've got this wrong. Can you explain it to me what you mean? So I think it's very important. I mean, that's the things that you learn about on the induction session as well, about the need to be respectful and to challenge, but to challenge in a constructive way and from a point of trying to support.
Bill, I've got a question about asking about the time commitment. The good old question we always get asked.
So, I mean, like I said, I think you really should be under no illusion that it is a big time commitment. So, it's important that you're in an area that you are passionate about, and you really, you want to. I mean, it sounds a bit corny, and motherhood and apple pie, but you want to give something back. The meetings, I say the meeting packs are large, and particularly, if it's not an area that you're completely au fait with, then that could take a while to get through. I mean, as I said at the beginning, I found I had to read papers a few times before I really got the gist of it. In addition, I think, to begin with, in the first year, you've got your induction sessions to attend as well. So, obviously these help, but again, it's a time commitment. But I think as time goes on and you get into the subject matter, then it does take a bit less in terms of getting up to speed with what a particular request is, and in some ways you become a bit of a victim of your success, because people then reach out and ask you questions and support, and I think that's nice. And that's something that I think I take a bit of pride in. So I've been asked to have a conversation on various topics, or someone will say, I've heard that this is, you did this before, how did you find it in your organisation? We're trying to do it here. So I think you just have to be prepared that it's said, between, well, I think it's on average of two days a month. I would say easily it's more than that. And, obviously, in terms of if you're going into this thinking it's as part of your retirement plan to enable you to lead the high life, and that's not the case. I mean, I think you should look on it as I say, it's something about giving back, and your time is recompensed, but not really to any high degree, and you get more out of it than the money, obviously. So to just be prepared that it's a lot of time, a lot of effort. You've got to get up to speed, but you do get a sense of purpose and a sense of achievement back from it.
Joe, there's a question about being able to develop as a person with doing different things on the board. Could you let people know about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we have just recently, for the second time, I had a session where we go through the skill set of the board to see where there's gaps, so that they're looking to to help you develop. I think there's kind of two sides to that, because at the end of the day, you want diversity in your board as well as in terms of experience. So there's no point in having everybody around the board who's got all the same understanding to the same level. So, for example, in the board that I'm on, one of the things is your clinical experience, and clearly I've got zero, and it wouldn't really help an awful lot, for me to develop experience in there, because that's not what I'm there for. I think in terms of your own development, well, clearly this has been an interesting time to be involved in the health sector, what with the pandemic. So you're obviously learning about the various challenges. You're learning how government is adapting to that, because again, as I said, I don't really have much of an idea. I've never been in the public sector, so that's all stuff that that gives you a good basis. Your fellow board members have got interesting different backgrounds, so you've got networking opportunities. Clearly, that's been a bit curtailed over this last year or so with everything being online. But I would say, yeah, I mean, I think the nice thing is that you could perhaps choose the level to which you want to take that development on.
Thank you for that. Anybody else got any other questions for Joe?
Robert, there's another question in the box there from Catherine about Jill's non-exec experience beforehand.
All right, I missed
And
that
could
one.
you elaborate on the lengthy application process, challenges, and what advice you might give?
Sure. Well, I'd never been a non-exec before. Clearly, I'd interacted with them because, as I said in my a few 10 minutes here, I'd been frequently at board meetings and all the rest of it, but I'd never actually been a non-exec myself. That was an idea I had because I knew that I didn't want to jump into a full-time role, but I knew that I didn't want to, go cold turkey from working all the hours God sent to do nothing. I looked on the internet for various things about non-execs, so I had an idea of what was required, as well as kind of from my own experience, just from reading things. There's courses that people offer, so you want to be a non-executive director and all the rest of it. And I guess, I got back from Amsterdam at the end of November, and I was very, very fortunate in that, whilst I was still rushing around trying to work out where our stuff was in storage and all the rest of it, the advert for the role I now have was actually forwarded to me by a friend. So, rather than abstractly going to find a course on being a non-exec, I actually went into the appointment process. Now, it was longer than I anticipated, but that was possibly also because it was over, December, and we all know that things take a bit longer as we come into the Christmas period. The application itself, again, I think this is a public sector rather than a non-exec aspect. I found it kind of strange that, they didn't want a CV and a covering letter. It was very much, it was a values-based recruitment. So it was about, give you experience of values that you can bring and give an experience of this and then, a description of that. So the application form in itself was fairly rigid in terms of information that they wanted. And then I guess I'd given up hope. I thought, looks like I'm not going to hear any more, when I got a phone call saying, come for an interview. So that was great. And then again, interview process, I guess if I go back to when my very first role as a lecturer in academia, it's very much the same kind of setup. You go in and it's a panel of people throwing questions at you. So that was kind of familiar, though not really the same as you get in a private sector setting. And then again, I'd kind of come to terms with better luck next time when I got a phone call to say, great, you've been appointed. So I think, just maybe understanding that wheels run slowly when there's so many people to consult with. And even from the point when I got the, congratulations, we want you on board, I think I'd already attended a couple of meetings before I got the official appointment letter through. So, and I think it's probably just a facet of there's so many people that need to be involved. So that was kind of the appointment process. Was there anything else in there? Have I answered that one?
Yeah, how long was that start to finish then, Jill? Can you give us an estimate of that? Because it sounded quite...
I guess
I can answer that, Jill, what the actual is. I was actually going to come to this because I saw that the whole process is on average is 18 weeks from beginning to end, from the advert going live to the person actually physical starting. It's quite a long period.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Jill. We might come back to you because there's loads of questions still. Robert, do you want to go on to your slides? Is that okay?
Yeah, yes, because I'll cover some of the answers to some of the questions before I start the next bit. Excuse me, I've got a sore throat this morning. Right, so we're looking at the actual applying for a public appointment. As I mentioned just now, it's 18 weeks on average from beginning an event. What we mean by that is from the time the advert goes live to actually being in receipt of the letter to say the minister wishes to appoint you to the position. If I may, I've been keeping an eye on the questions. So in order to apply for a public appointment, you need to have a right to work in the UK, given the new guidance following our leaving the European Union. People of Scotland, I mentioned earlier about being more representative people of Scotland. What we mean by that, yes, it's people of Scotland, but what we mean more representative of wider society. That's what basically is meant by that one. So can I have And regarding somebody asked about people holding more than one appointment. It's only 5% of people who hold public appointment hold more than one public appointment, and then on average it's usually just 2 appointments. It's usually just 2 appointments to hold. They may be related to each other, but if you are applying for another public appointment and you already hold a public appointment, you must declare it within the application form. It's at the beginning of the form. Kirsty, can I have the slides, please? It should be slide, I think it's slide 12.
Bear me a second, I'll try again. It's on. Can you see that?
Yeah, it should be slide 12 in the application process. Right, so all public appointments are advertised on the Appointed for Scotland website, which sits within the gov.scot. So I'll share these slides as I mentioned earlier. So all the adverts are published on there. So they will also more than likely be published on the individual public bodies website as well. And the public appointments administrators will send out. We use Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter as well. So we'll go out that way. And we have, if you are interested in knowing about public appointments, and there's nothing, you go on the public appointments website, Appointed for Scotland, you can actually register to receive notifications of public appointments. So anything that comes up saves you going in and checking all the time. So I'll try and describe the process, which Jill has mentioned is quite complex. So the stage 1 is an application. It's usually an application form, that will be online. Some of the appointments at this moment in time are doing a shortened application form along with a job summary or tailored CV and a covering letter. It depends from each appointment. It will be specified within the advert what they're looking to do, but there's always an application that you need, some form of an application form you have to complete in. So you usually be asked for your career or life history, relevant experience, and ours process, given the public sector, it's competency based, and we use the STAR process. I'll mention what I mean by STAR in a little bit. Can I have the next slide, please?
Sorry, Robert, I'm having problems with the slides today.
It's okay.
I'll stop sharing and start again. Is it further on than this?
No, it's the next slide to this one.
Thank you.
Good old technical problems.
Okay, is this the slide?
No, it's the next one. Slide 13.
Can't see the numbers. Sorry, Robert. Just tell me to go back or forward.
Go forward, please.
That's it.
Oh, it's not done it. It's not moved. It seems to have frozen again. Oh well, no problem. I'll just talk then. So the next slide is about tips for successful applications. We often get people, they just provide a list of things, and it doesn't really tell the panel anything. So we always advise to avoid jargon and technical terms, and to assume that the reader has no knowledge about the role that you've done, because we sometimes get people saying Chief Executive of X, but you go, well, what does that tell you? So they need to be and they want to be. There's usually a word limit. I meant to say it's usually between 300 and 500 words per competency, and to give specific examples rather than just a general description, as in this is my career history, and just listing it all, and referring back to the advert and job specification. I appreciate you've all done applications before, but we find loads and loads of people fall down on this. giving examples that demonstrates a wide range of the skills that they're looking for, as well as working knowledge and a track record. And a lot of people, and this is where they fall down on, they get this referred back all the time from board and panel chairs, and saying people that have used them, we did this, we did that. They wanted to focus on the I, what you actually did. So back to the STAR. So basically that is competency based. So basically we're looking at you to describe the situation, the task, the action, the result. And the other thing they like to focus on is also the reflection, as in what happened as a result of you doing it, what difference did it make as regarding your intervention, to make whatever example you're given, to say, yeah, I'm really, really brilliant, I did all this, please come and please interview me. So once you've submitted the application, you will be invited to come along to, if you're successful, along to an interview. And that's usually can either take the form of just a basic interview, or the interview with an example of.
Yeah, how are you doing?
Oh, they've got an interruption there. Can be simulations such as a board paper or case study, which will either be sent to you or you'll be given it actually on the day. But usually when the admin team phone you to invite you to the interview, they will let you know what it is. Like, for example, excuse me, you may be asked to you may be told that you may get the board paper in advance, and so therefore but you don't know the questions that you will be asked, so they'll when ask you, but it will be explained to you and it will be backed up in writing when you actually get the further details for the interview. So I say the interview will be competency-based interview, and it will be based on the core skills which are outlined within the job specification. I need to make you aware that some NHS boards use psychometric testing. That's usually for a board chair appointment. Although the NHS are currently looking at the way they do recruitment, so it may be changing the way they do the recruitment, but they've not let us know what we will possibly moving to. It'll be later on this year. So they've got a working group looking at that, just to make you aware that the NHS are sometimes different the way they do their recruitment. So everybody has to follow meet a fit and proper test. What it means by that is going back to the code of conduct for board members, to make sure you're a fit and proper person. We will also do, if you're shortlisted for interview, we'll also do a social media check. But that's part of the process, and that is out just to make sure that if you were appointed, there's nothing that you've tweeted or you've appeared in the media, the printed media or digital media, that has it possible to be at conflict with the role that you would be taking on. And as I said earlier, all the appointments are based on merit. Go back to some of the other questions, like the pay and remuneration. Somebody's asked about pay and remuneration, saying that you get more in England, and we are aware of that. And that is something that the Scottish Government Remuneration Group are looking at, as in how much money you get for the role. We are told it is a public purse, so it depends on the role, how much remuneration you will get for your time. Usually between 2 to 3 days. For board chairs, it may be a couple of days a week. For board members, it may be a couple of days a month. It depends on the appointment, but that will all be outlaid within the application pack for the form. Regarding the location, quite a lot of the public bodies tend to be based in the Central Belt. However, there are appointments, there are boards who, like for instance, Nature Scott, I've got the right name, which has changed. We used to be known as Scottish National Heritage, but now called Nature Scott. They're based in Inverness, so the locations will be dependent on the individual board, although all boards at the moment are meeting remotely, which is a lot of people are really happy about that. So we don't know what will happen at the end of this process, whether we will go back to meeting all the meetings in person, or whether it'll be a mixture of both. Regarding advisory roles, I mentioned advisory roles earlier. Some of those, they advise the chief executive, or they will advise ministers Education Scotland, Social Security Scotland, Transport Scotland, the Mobility and Access Committee, they're all advisory roles. So they will be advertised either on the individual public bodies website, like for example, for a lot of the advisory roles. There's another one, so I forgot about Scottish Public Pensions Agency. They're an advisory role as well. So it will be advertised. The advisory roles don't tend to come through public appointments. They would tend to be advertised directly by the public body themselves, just to make you aware of that. Somebody asked about the pay and remuneration for coming along to going to away days and induction sessions. That you will be paid that is classed as part of the role, so you would be remunerated because that would be classed as your time commitment for the board. And somebody asked about mentoring people coming to this for the first time. Usually within the application pack, there will be a point of question, a point of contact, and which you can ask any questions regarding the role. That will usually be somebody within the organisation. I've just seen a question pop up from Keith. The 300, yes, a lot of people say that they find the 300-word limit challenging to follow part of situation tasks. Yes, we are actually in the process. There is a guidance available on the Appointed for Scotland website, and that has literally just been updated, and it was posted on the website on Friday afternoon. But I can forward that guidance to whoever wants that. I can do that to let you know. It's interesting, Malcolm, you mentioned changing the chemistry. We actually do quite a bit of work with changing the chemistry. We'll often do outreach and engagement events, and changing the sometimes we do it in partnership with Changing the Chemistry. Changing the Chemistry is an organisation that is founded by a lady called Tanya Castell. And it's sort of like a network group, and they can coach people, or they can give them share experiences and give people some help with applications of that. But Changing Chemistry is certainly one of the organisations we do work with. Have I missed any questions?
I think you've got most of them, Robert, but just to add to that, so any guidance we can share with people after this call, any web links.
Do you want me to send that to you, Kirsty?
Yeah, that's fine. Anything like that we can share. Obviously there's Changing the Chemistry, and they advertise board roles as well as having things. Yes,
we normally anytime Changing the Chemistry are on our list. Anytime we're putting a role up, we will forward it to Changing the Chemistry. We used to forward it to institute directors as well. Do we still do that?
Yes, that's us, Robert. We do that.
I didn't know if the admin team still did that, because everything's all changed to us.
No, we've got a section on our website for board appointments on all non-paid for roles. And of course, there's the training for non-exec directors or trustees that we still do.
Oh yes.
And if anybody on the call would like to speak to somebody who's in one of these roles, we can make the connection for you as well. So, Robert, any final comments? There's just a couple of last questions there.
I've just seen those pinging up. Oh yes, right. Andrew's asking about a workshop from boards of current bodies. Yes, we used to do those events, but for one reason or another, they ceased and they've never really started again. I used to do them because I used to work in public bodies policy. And I used to do them, and then when I left public bodies policy to go over to public appointments, for some reason they don't happen. I don't know the answer to that question, to be perfectly honest. Although that is something that we are looking to, we can actually feedback about board chair roles.
And then there's a last question, Robert, that's come in from Aidan.
Oh,
there's still some questions coming about the need to have disclosure clearance. Can you tell us a bit more about that, please?
Right, and there's a piece of work that's going on at the moment about pre-employment checks. Some roles at the moment, you, for example, the care inspectorate, and you will need, as part of the recruitment process, a disclosure will have to be carried out, given the nature of what the organisation do. Basically, they regulate care homes and those who work in the health and social care sector. It's dependent on the role at the moment for disclosure checks, but that may be changing, although we're currently seeking legal advice on that regarding disclosure checks and the whole issue regarding pre-employment checks. But it very much depends on the role.
Thank you. Thanks for that question, Aidan. And Andrew's raised a good point about the remuneration question, and the differentials are critical. He says he sits on the board of ROS, the English equivalent, and the daily rate is 4 times the Scottish rate. So if you could feed that back, that would be fantastic.
And that's it's a bigger board, I would imagine, as well.
But Andrew might want to share some specifics with us offline, and we can get that to you, Robert, no problem.
I'm laughing at the comment from Dave. Yes, the college boards, their remuneration is 0 at the moment. They don't come under public appointments. It's really weird with the college sector. The only appointments that come under us are the actual regional college board chairs, and so sometimes for a while the cultural bodies as well, their posts were unremunerated, but they now get remunerated. And
Catherine's asked a question around diversity of appointments, not just the gender angle.
Yes.
Are there any stats on that you could share with us at all?
Oh, go. I actually meant to print it off. Well, we at this moment in time, we're doing a big piece of work at the moment, to get more people from Black and ethnic minorities, because they're underrepresented at the moment. And so I'm actually doing a workshop next week with to raise awareness through a couple of Black and ethnic minorities. And we've been doing some other work in the background regarding that. We've also been doing a project with people from a disability point of view, and they are so we've been given six board members, 6 people with a disability had the opportunity to shadow a public body for a year in order to get the experience of actually what's involved. And we're doing that was with Inclusion Scotland. So we're going to be doing some further work with Inclusion Scotland and Disability Equality Scotland regarding the disability age. That's a difficult one, and that's one that we have been really, really grappling with on that issue, trying to get people, because at this moment in time, to be classed as young in public appointments, it's 49 and under. Unfortunately, I'm no longer classed as that, and so that is something we have been grappling with, and it's something we are really, really conscious of, and it's something it's not going to be an easy fix. We admit that, given that sometimes the experience that boards are looking for. So sometimes it is a barrier, especially with those under the age of 40, trying to get board members in that way. But we've got two board chairs who are in their early 40s. So we have been making slight inroads, but there is more work to do regarding age, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Thank you, Robert. So if you get any final guidance, I think that was most people were just chatting about how much people are paid, and it's different in Ireland and Scotland and Wales, in England rather. Have you got any other final points you want to share? Because obviously the purpose of today is so that we encourage people to share their skills and apply for these jobs. Is there any final words you want to share with the audience?
Just to check out the Appointed for Scotland website, and to see what appointments are available. There may not, as I say, there may not be something on the website that's been advertised at the moment, because with the COVID, all public appointments ceased for 6 months, and we're now slowly starting up the activity regarding that. So if there's nothing there that interests you, to complete the register of interest form, and we will notify you on the any appointments that are further appointments are coming up. We'll share the slides as well, because we've got within the slide pack, we've got some videos from which are actually some public appointees actually talking about the role more in detail. And there's another YouTube video. I'm just trying to look at my slide pack here, which actually explains a bit more. So I can share that for yourself. Yeah.
Thank you, Jill.
Thanks for your time.
I'll just go to Jill just to see
Yeah,
if you
no
have
problem.
any final words at all to share with the audience. Obviously, you made the leap. It looks like you're enjoying it. Any final words of encouragement for our audience?
No, I mean, as I say, I would just make sure don't go into it with your eyes closed. I mean, it is a lot of time. But in terms of, you know, for me, it was about making sure that, you know, I still kind of had something that kept me engaged. And, you know, in terms of developing yourself, I mean, I've learned a lot about the health sector I would never have known before. And yeah, I mean, it's a sense of achievement and a sense of contributing. But I do think that we've a long way to go in terms of remuneration. I mean, I don't think any of the board members are there for the money, but, you know, again, if you're trying to convince people to give up their time, then, you know, I think we need to look at that.
Lovely. Thank you. Thanks so much, Jill and Robert, for sharing your expertise in this area. We'll share the slides and your details with the audience. And thank you, everybody, for coming along. It was really, really engaging session. And we'll share everything afterwards. I've recorded the session too. And if you've got any queries, if you just email me, that'd be fantastic. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.